All right, I am live and I believe this is working. Hey everyone, welcome to this. I kind of a first live stream right now. I don't know really if it's first, but it's kind of first on StreamYard. I streamed live on YouTube a couple of times. I streamed live when I reached 100 subscribers, and then I streamed live when I talked about um, grunge music and whether or not Nirvana was a grunge band. But this is the first time I've ever streamed live on YouTube. So if you're out there on YouTube, I am taking Q&A on anything 80s and 90s pop culture. And what the heck, we'll throw in some 70s pop culture as well. And what else? Oh, yeah. I don't know, anything Generation X. And if nobody has anything to say, and if nobody has anything to say, then I will definitely ramble on for a little bit here. It was kind of interesting because last week I rambled on and thinking that it was live and wondered why nobody was interacting with me. And then I realized that it was nothing. It was dead air the whole time. So Thrash Pondo Ponds, it's alive. Yes, Thrash Pondo Ponds, we are live. Thank you so much for joining me. So I run a channel here on YouTube and a podcast, and it's called Retro Serial. And I'm going to go into the history of this channel and why I did it and its name change for a little bit. Hey, how you doing? Good vibes. And you told me your name, but I totally forgot how to say it. And we had a long conversation, and it was a great conversation. Thank you so much for joining me here. But I don't want to butcher your name. So I'm not going to say it, but you're up on the screen there, and everyone can try to guess it. And I would rather not say it than say it wrong and embarrass myself here live on YouTube. Thank you, though, so much for joining us. It's okay. I'm back. Sorry about that. That was a small thing that happened there. I went off the air for just a second. Sorry about that. Thank you. And let's talk a little bit about this channel. So what I do here on this channel is I talk about growing up everything 80s and 90s and 70s, actually 70s, 80s, and 90s. And 90s, the end of the 90s is kind of the cutoff point. Originally, this channel was called Retro Serial. No, originally this channel was called Serial for Dinner. And it comes from the fact that Serial for Dinner was a big part of my growing up years. So I called it Serial for Dinner. Unfortunately, when I started, I didn't know that there was already another podcast out there called Serial for Dinner. And I didn't know what to do. And, I know that you can't really trademark names to a degree, like there's some battle over that. But at the same time, I didn't want to fight that battle in case, this got popular, which I was planning on doing. So what did I do? I decided to change the name to Some Serial for Dinner, which I found to be long and, just too hard to say. Some Serial for Dinner podcast. And the other thing is Serial for Dinner didn't really kind of let the audience know what it was this station was about. And so I ended up calling it Retro Serial, because there's another place out there called Retro Blasting, which I'm a big fan of. And I actually was thinking of that podcast and that channel when I started this. So I was thinking, retro, and people would know that that's what this channel is about. And cereal for dinner didn't really let anybody know what this channel is about. So I just said, okay, we'll call it Retro Cereal, keeping the cereal idea, because a lot of people ate cereal. I found out that was a little bit of a mistake too, because if you type in Retro Cereal, you get like Lucky Charms and things like that. Well, what should we talk about? Since I had a little bit of interaction, but if you have some questions for me, please go ahead and ask. If not, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what's coming up. And after I tell you about what's coming up, if I don't have any questions, I'm just going to go ahead and end the broadcast and call this good enough for a first time and a little bit of a test. So this Thursday, I have Steven Sundstrom and Thrash Pando Pawns on the podcast, and we are going to be talking about album, or we're going to be talking about soundtracks. That's right, soundtracks is what we're going to be talking about. Great soundtracks from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and we're all going to submit our favorite soundtracks and just kind of discuss them, because soundtracks were so important to us as we were growing up. So that's coming up. We'll be recording that Thursday, and I hope that by Friday that will be available both to watch and to listen to. And also, I am going to be starting a broadcast more regularly, hopefully on Monday nights as kind of a regular thing, maybe on Tuesday nights, definitely not on Wednesday nights, because Wednesday nights is Dave's live stream. And I'm making I'm making the time for that for him. But I'm going to be doing regular Monday night things, and we already got a couple shows planned. Me and Thrash Pando Pawns has got a couple of shows planned. Yo, what's up? Redbeard Videos, Chris from over at Redbeard Videos. Hey, brother. We need to do something on your channel next time. That would be awesome to do something on your channel. We can talk about how, I don't know, horrible Vince Neil is as a singer or something like that. Talk about bands over on your channel. He has a great channel. Go over, check his channel out, Redbeard Videos. He's been on my program a couple of times, and I'm going to have him back on the program. If he will grace me with his presence, I'm going to go ahead and have him back on the program a bunch of more times, because that's somebody I can just talk about with music for a long time. And Terrell popped in, and he says hi. Hi, Ian. Hope you have a safe and wonderful Monday night. It's been a while. Yeah, it has been. I didn't see you actually over on, I actually haven't seen you over on Dave's live stream. So, yeah, I hope you're okay. I know you had a birthday, so happy birthday. And, let's see. Redbeard also says, I've just upgraded my studio, so I'll be going live often. Look, again, brother, I'd love to be on your program. You know that you and I are both really opinionated when it comes to music, and you're somebody who's not afraid to to talk about your opinion. So, yeah, if you want me on your channel, anytime, literally anytime, just let me know. Give me a heads up. Always a pleasure, my man. Always a pleasure as well with you. All right. Okay. Terrell also says, thanks for the belated birthday wish. You are welcome. Let me just say real quick that so today's Monday. So in a week from Monday, we are going to be doing another live event. And it's my first time live event that I'm actually going to have a guest on. It's going to be Thrash Pando Pawns, and we are going to be doing a couple things. The first thing we're going to be doing is this week we're going to be taking a Q&A of our book versus movie. So I do this on my podcast. I talk every once in a while about a book versus movie. something from Generation X. Either the book has to be written during that time or the movie has to have come out during that time. And we've done 3 so far. We've done Dune, we've done the Galaxy one, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and we've done, what was the third one we did? I can't remember. But anyway, we're going to be taking questions and answers on book versus movie. So awesome. Be here next Monday night. After that, we're going to be doing retro review, which we're going to be looking at some retro television shows and doing it season by season. And the first one is going to be the X-Files. So we're going to be talking about the X-Files. Thrash Pondo Pons and I have both watched season 1 of the X-Files, and we are going to just kind of review it, talk about our favorite episodes. I love the X-Files, and I kind of wanted to get into something a little bit more 90s. My channel has been a lot of 80s stuff, and a little bit of 90s with some music, but mostly 80s, and it wasn't really like my plan. But I kind of wanted to get in something a little bit more 90s, so I thought what better place to start on 90s stuff than with the X-Files. What a great show that was. Are the tracks related to movies? Are the tracks related to movies? I'm not sure I quite understand that question. We're just going to be talking about like great soundtracks. Yes, yeah, movie soundtracks. That yeah, maybe I didn't make that clear. That's why I didn't make sense. So yes, it is going to be 80s. It's going to be movies soundtracks. Our favorite movie soundtracks. Yes, thank you for asking and helping me clarify. Hello, Retro, Mr. 79 Man from Arizona. You're not too far from where I am. It's hot here. I don't know what part of Arizona you're in, but it's got to be hot where you are as well. And you also add first time here. I love retro. I'm an 80s kid. You and I both, brother. And Terrell, he says, do you think David Hasselhoff played the role of reviving Baywatch and getting the show back on the air after NBC abruptly canceled the first season? I do, and I have to say that I wasn't a big fan of Baywatch. I'm not going to say never saw it or anything like that. And of course, it was totally part of our pop culture. It was totally part of our generation. And when I was on, as Baywatch was on, it's just like, I don't remember what night it came on, but it's just like, flip through the channels, Baywatch, Baywatch, watch that for a couple seconds. And I'm always happy when shows do well. I'm always happy when shows come back. But I can't really speak to the issue too knowledgeably, unfortunately, Terrell, because I wasn't a huge fan of it. And I just never really got into it. I know you were born, you're a 90s kid. I get that. You are a 90s kid. But I know you love everything retro as I do. And you know what? Part of my show, too, is not necessarily just talking about 70s, 80s, and 90s. I talk about Gilligan's Island, too. I talk about Beverly Hillbillies. Because even though those shows didn't come out in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, they were certainly on television when I was growing up. So... it influenced me. And really, it's about what influenced us as Generation X. I'll go back a little bit and talk about some earlier programs. I've done that with Dave on some of the podcast things that I've done with Dave, and also I think with Steven as well. I know definitely I've done that with Dave. Some things I'm looking forward to. Well, let me just tell you that I just released a video on Black Star. And I talked about kind of an abridged history and some things that you didn't know about Black Star, because what was really big in the late 70s and what was really big in the 80s was this idea of sword and sorcery, and also sci-fi, of course. You had the Star Wars boom. But sword and sorcery was huge as well. And remember all those, B-rated sword and sorcery shows like Yore and I can't remember what the other one was. It had that girl in it who died just recently. She was just in that 70s show. Beastmaster. Yeah, Beastmaster. So I did one on Black Star because Black Star, the cartoon, was one of my all-time favorite cartoons. And I'm going to be doing more on some television shows, giving like 5 facts or an abridged history. They tend to do well, and I tend to like them. Like Buck Rogers. Yes, like Buck Rogers. Exactly. That was one of those shows that was a little too disco for me. You know what's interesting about Buck Rogers that I just learned, because I am planning on doing something on Buck Rogers. All right, Terrell, you got to bounce. Don't forget Kroll. Yes, Terrell wrote, don't forget Kroll. Yes. All right, Thrash Pondo, we'll talk to you soon. What's interesting about Buck Rogers is that it was supposed to be in 1986 that he left Earth. And then he goes, he gets lost in space and comes back to Earth 500 years later in the future. So even though it was released in, I think it was 79 and 81, and it had 2 seasons, it's so 70s out. I mean, it was just a disco movie in space, if you ask me. But what's funny about it is that it is supposed to be 1986. And how much more wrong could you be than Buck Rogers as to what the 80s was going to look like, especially mid-80s? Terrell, let's see here. The infamous role, whatever, of the early 1970s was responsible for the cancellation of the Wholesome. Oh, really? That's sad. Make room for more edgy, modern, urban, socially relevant ones. Well, very interesting. Thank you, Terrell. All right, let's see. And Dan, the Daily Dan blog, OMG, you would do this while wrestling is on. I didn't know wrestling was on. I don't know what kind of wrestling you're talking about. Are you talking about WWE? Or are you talking about like the kind of Olympic wrestling? I'm not sure. I am not sure. Thrash Pondo Pons. Terrell, born in 86. I was a freshman in college. Yes. All right. Is there an Instagram account for Retro Serial? I don't have anything else other than this YouTube channel and the podcast. So, let me know if there are people out there who wanna see me go a little bit more, like maybe make a Facebook page or make an Instagram page. I'm not opposed to doing that. I'd like to see one of them kind of work first. You know what I mean? I'd like to see one of them take off, and then after that, I can kind of look at something else. But who knows? Like I might do really well on Instagram. I'll put up an Instagram page. I know it's kind of saturated over there. I get on my regular Instagram page, which is called A Mind for Fitness. I get a lot. It just kind of cross-pollinates because I'm into 80s and 90s stuff and retro stuff. And I know that there are a ton of retro pages out there, but I'm not opposed to opening one more and competing in this market. And it's kind of interesting because I was telling Dave this a while back, and that is like TV's changed. Like the way we consume visual audio entertainment is different than when I was growing up. And the reason why it was different than when I was growing up is because you had to be there when the show was on. Radio or television, you had to be there when the show was on. And now we're not competing. Other than kind of these live things kind of do compete with each other a little bit. But even that you can watch in retrospect. You just watch it, I couldn't watch it live, I'll watch it later. And so as a result, we're living in a great time. There's no it used to be like if somebody was watching your show, they couldn't be watching my show. And so there was like this competition, and there was this little, I don't know, healthy, but also like negative, like how do we get people to watch your show? Like if if my piece of the pie is bigger, then your piece of the pie is smaller. But that's like out of the window now. Now it's just like, let's everybody, I mean, we have 24 hours in a day. You spend them however you want. You watch whatever you want when you want to watch it. And let's get as many people monetized. Let's get as many people up there as possible. Hey, everyone who's joining me on the program, you want to do me a favor. I'm going to presuppose that you've already hit the subscribe button. But do me this favor right now, for everybody who's watching. Do me this favor. Pick one of my videos right now. Pick one of my, not right this second. I mean, wait till the live stream's over. Pick one of my videos and share it on your favorite social media, and get the word out about the great content that you are creating, that we're creating here. Yeah, let's see. We got some more comments here. Shows like The Brady Bunch, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, MASH, and the Norman Lear sitcoms helped define and pave the way for Gen X era of the TV as we know it. Yes, sir. I couldn't agree with you more. I'm going to tell you what I am watching right now. Well, we're watching a few things. I'm going to tell you what I'm excited about too. But I'm rewatching Family Ties again. I'm rewatching The X-Files again, obviously, because we're doing a retro review. But yeah, I'm rewatching Family Ties again. And one of the biggest defining markers of sitcoms, and I think other television shows to a degree in that era, is the lessons they were trying to teach you. And I don't know what that was about. I don't know if they thought, well, kids are growing up in front of the TV. There's more single family parents. There's more latchkey kids. We've got to make sure that these children grow up with values. And so every show kind of had like a lesson to it. And it addressed some cultural relevant topic that was going on. And for instance, one of my early videos was Mr. Belvedere taught me about AIDS. I put that up there, kind of a little bit shocking. I'd like to redo that video actually. But the truth is yeah, Mr. Belvedere did teach me about AIDS. And I wasn't the only person who taught me about AIDS, but you know, it was like anything that was going on during the 80s that was like big was on the television. I remember literacy was big, and so on Webster we had the grandfather of Webster, the adopted grandfather of Webster was illiterate. And they didn't know. They just thought he had bad eyesight. I don't know if you remember that episode, but they thought he had bad eyesight, and so they just thought he had bad eyesight. But then when he couldn't read a menu, it's like, oh man, you can't read, can you? And then the girls are better than boys thing. That kind of goes back earlier than that. That actually, I remember seeing a little bit of that on the Brady Bunch. But that goes back to the, like the Brady Bunch where Marcia is able to join the Boy Scouts, but she ends up not doing it. So that was, it was real preachy. And I loved these shows. But I was glad when the 90s came along and kind of the Seinfeld stuff came along and it wasn't as preachy. Will you consider, Georgia Eris, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, forgive me, asks, will you consider watching All in the Family? I would consider it. I don't know to what degree or depth I would consider it, but I would definitely consider watching All in the Family. I was on when I was a little kid, and I remember watching it. I remember enjoying it. And I've watched a lot of parodies of All in the Family these days. That's a lot of fun to watch, those parodies. I don't know if you remember the Mad TV. Let me think about that. I've got several irons in the fire right now, but I'm always looking for new ideas. Let me know what you're thinking. Why do you want to see like a top 5 on it, or let me know what you're thinking about this. Do you want me to do like a top 5? Do you want me to do like a retrospect and review? Exactly what it is you talk, what it is you're thinking for me to watch it, or just you thinking, well, boy, you got to watch that. All right, let's move on. I got to have a little sip of my bubbly water. Not an official paid sponsor. I like Brady Bunch, Mr. 7'9" man. I liked Brady Bunch and thought Jan was more attractive than Marsha. You know, a lot of people did think Eve Plum was more attractive. You know, she had the little, more of the girl next door look, while Marsha kind of had the supermodel look. So I totally get that. All right. Terrell, throughout the 70s and 80s, TV shows featuring teenage lead characters were just a few and far between. Yes, for sure, Terrell. Yeah, you know, I don't know what really broke that mold to have a teen character be the lead. I know that, like I said, Family Ties kind of pushed that a little bit forward. The original concept of Family Ties was that it was going to be about Elise and Steve Keaton, and that it was going to be this, I don't know, this big deal with them. But Michael J. Fox stole the show, and they just ended up writing more toward him because the audiences just loved him as the main character. And I do think that they did a good job in trying to be equal with all the characters. But I mean, you know, there's more time given to him, more screen time, more stories dedicated to him and his ventures and his plights than anybody else, and that was just a result of how the story goes. And speaking of how the story goes, I mean, let me just say this, and let me just say this, that ideas, like you have an idea for, like I had an idea for a channel, you have an idea for a show, and what ends up happening with that show is not the same thing as maybe your original concept, or it kind of takes on a life of its own. And I realized that kind of happened with this channel, that I actually do talk a lot, when I talk about television shows, I talk a lot about like comedy shows. And I didn't realize, totally didn't even realize I was doing this. And I didn't realize I was doing this until I had Dave Sundstrom on my program for a second time. And because I did a top 5 TV moms and TV dads, and they were all from sitcoms. And so I thought, well, I'll have him on the program and we'll talk about TV shows and moms and dads and TV families. And that's one of the shows I have out, is TV families. And he started saying, well, you know, I like the Waltons. And I'm like, I didn't even think that I'm hedging toward comedy. I didn't even think about that. And it wasn't purposeful. It was just how my mind was going and what was doing well on my program. So I can see that with Family Ties. You know, Family Ties is supposed to be about Elise and Stephen Keaton, but it ends up being about something else. Okay, got a few more comments to get through. You pronounce your name properly. Oh, thank you. And I think I was thinking a top 10 episodes. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I will put a pin in that for right now, because you got to understand that this is still part-time. I'm not monetized yet. You guys can all help on that by sharing this on your favorite social media and all that stuff, and everything you do, I so much appreciate. Every subscriber means the world to me. But honestly, you know, if I did this more full-time, I would definitely do that, and I will put a pin in that. And don't be afraid to remind me of that later. I've got some things down the pipe that's coming right now, but I would be interested in that. I want to be pleasing to my fans. I want to be pleasing to, not that you're fans, you know what I mean, people who like the program. All right. So so I honestly take everything into consideration. I take everything that you put out there and say into consideration, and the consideration of the job that I have and the ministry that I have and the things I do on the side that I have to kind of pull it all together and make decisions, and the resources too. So I definitely will. Thrash Pondo Pond says, what would you say was the 80th of the 80s cult films? Oh, gosh. Well, I'll go with you, Repo Man. You caught me off guard, man. I don't know what to say. That 80 of the 80th cult films. Oh, I'm gonna have to let that one tumble in my head. You know what I'm gonna think about that is in the middle of the night. I'm gonna wake up and go, I should have said that. I should have said that. One time, a long time ago, when I did this first YouTube live thing, Terrell asked me about 90 sitcoms, and I just drew a blank. Like, oh, 90 sitcoms. And after I went off air, I totally thought about 7 or 8 different sitcoms that I should have brought up. So that happens. 80s cult films. Well, we'll think about it. That'd be a good for a show. When I was younger, I've always thought that soap operas, game shows, talk shows, and the occasional after special were one of the dominant daytime TV. Not anymore these days. Yes, for sure, not anymore these days. And let's see. Let's do this first. Yeah, Rugrats. What do you know about that? I remember watching that as an adult and going, oh, yeah, these cartoons are weird. These cartoons are different from the way I used to watch cartoons when I was a kid. All right. Do you like the movie The Hitcher? I have to be honest with you. I don't think I saw that movie. Was that with the C. Thomas Howell? I think. I don't really remember. And Terrell After School Special. Yes, I knew what you meant. I do remember one after school special, and that was with Scott Baio, and he gets high. And I think that we learned a lot from that special, that if you get high, you get high on a marijuana cigarette, that you will laugh a lot and you'll act like an idiot and it will ruin your life. So don't do it. I remember that episode. Who else remembers that episode? I totally remember that episode. Mr. 79, Rutger Hauer, The Thriller, great flick. Yes, okay, it's coming back to me. Of course, yes, C. Thomas Howell. Let's see. I don't know. I never saw it. I did see the commercials for it, and I've just never gone back to watch it because it was either not, it wasn't on HBO when I was awake or if I was away. And like I said, if you weren't watching TV when it happened, you didn't watch it. And I think by the time I started renting films regularly, I think I got, watching films regularly. Renting films regularly, it just didn't show up. I just didn't watch it. But it was one of those shows, I have to say, it was one of those shows I was interested in and did want to see, and just never gotten back to seeing it again. A couple of shows that I did want to see, that I want to rewatch again, is The Man with One Red Shoe, and The Man with One Red Shoe, and Tank. Tank, you remember Tank? I do remember Tank. Did you watch Fraggle Rock? I loved Fraggle Rock. I was kind of at an age where I was getting a little too old for it. And I remember thinking when I was watching Fraggle Rock, I remember going, I think it came out right when I was a 10 or something like that. So it was okay. Maybe 11. But I remember at 12 years old thinking, should I be watching this? Am I a little, when you go to school and you tell the rest of your friends, hey, I watched Fraggle Rock, and they kind of laugh at you. And think, well, what are you still 9.5? You're not 10 yet. You're not 11 yet. So I loved Fraggle Rock, but I kept it on the down low. Let's see. What was your favorite TV show that sadly got canceled too soon? Hey, listen, I don't know about looking back on it now, but I remember thinking about a lot of TV shows that at the time I thought were great, and I wondered what the heck happened. That Benjamin Bean show that was on Fox where the kid was, the kid's father was a spy. I thought that was a great show, and I was unhappy that it got canceled. And so, I was just unhappy that got canceled. What was another one? There was another show that was so cheesy, and it had a guy who was in Little House on the Prairie, but it was a comedy, and it had one cool kid who kind of had a haircut where it was tapered in on the side and long in the back. The mullet, but the pasted mullet, not the cut short mullet. And all the kids were like 12. It was kind of like a father and son show. So I do remember that. And I remember thinking, oh, that's really cool. But I went back and watched a little bit of the episodes of it, and it was pretty lame. And there was a superhero show with, I think it was with one of the kids from Stand By Me. And he was a superhero. He had superpowers. All right. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. Zoprexel says Nancy Reagan, just say no. That's right. Just say no. Terrell, what's your favorite 90s show that sadly got canceled too soon? I think I said this before. There were shows in the 90s that I really did enjoy watching. Just Shoot Me was one of them. Seinfeld was one of them. Saved by the Bell was a little childish. But I can't really think of one that got canceled too soon. I think there was a Matthew Perry one that got canceled a little too soon. And there was a show called Men Behaving Badly that was on in the 90s that I thought was really good. And that got canceled as well. And I wasn't happy about that. Fraggle Rock. I'm sorry if I Zeo Prexapel. I know that I'm not pronouncing that right. I totally I am sad about that. I remember Fred Savage did a situation comedy that got canceled too soon. Okay. Terrell or Thrash Ponzo. Yes. Yes. Okay. And trying to keep up with this here. Sorry. Not keeping it up with it too well. Superplex. Okay. Thank you for that. Really appreciated that. I like The Courtship of Eddie's Father. Yeah, I think that's going back quite a ways. Some of those older shows I caught on Nick at Night, but didn't really make a huge impact on me. So like Hazel was on Nick at Night, and I enjoyed that, but it just wasn't in heavy rotation for me as a kid. So I remember some of those shows during that era. Lassie, I certainly liked. That was on Nickelodeon, Nick at Night. What else? Dennis the Menace. That was great. I'm not sure I've ever caught an episode of The Courtship of Eddie's Father. But one show that I did watch that referenced The Courtship of Eddie's Father was Mystery Science Theater 3000. Yes. One of my all-time favorite 90s show. Let's see. Superplex says worst cancellation ever. Police Squad. Hey, I got to give it to you there. That's for sure. That was a great show. But at least out of that, we got the 3 Naked Gun movies. So I mean, who knows whether or not they would have done a movie. Let me tell you, the show in the early 2000s, which is getting to be retro now, that got canceled too soon, and that was Arrested Development. I was a huge Arrested Development fan from the first 3 seasons. That 4th season was horrible. Sorry, I don't mean to disappoint anybody out there. Don't call me Shirley. Okay, it's a deal. MST3K. Yeah, I was a huge fan. Anybody else out there, an MST3K fan? If you did, who did you like better, Joel or Mike? We could talk about that all day. I was a Joel fan. I was really upset when Joel left. and I learned to like Mike. And I thought the Joel time was a little bit more underground reference, and the Mike time was a little bit more pop culture reference. And Superplex, people, let tell about my best friend. Died too young. Okay, I'm still sorry to hear that. Bring it down. Let's bring it back up again. Sorry to hear that. Don't mean to make any light of that. Tank had such a crush on Miss Harrison. Tank and the Man with One Red Shoe, as I recall, were shows that were constantly on HBO. I mean, we're talking constantly on HBO. And so I remember watching that, and Revenge of the Ninja. I want to do a show just on 80s ninja shows. There's a guy out there who runs a martial arts podcast called the Kung Fu Genius, and I'm a big fan of that podcast. But he did one on 80s ninja shows, and I'm trying to get him on with me. He's booked for like 6 months, but he says after that he might do it. So bug him. Like if you go over there to the Kung Fu Genius, say, hey, you need to be on E&C's show and talk about this. Bug him, because get things done. Let's get things done as a community. I also want to do a podcast on comedians. I've been trying to get maybe a professional comedian from Generation X on and talk about the comedians we like. I like both Joel and Mike. I do too. It's just that I remember I think it was 93 when they announced that Joel was leaving, and I was just devastated because I was such a huge fan of Joel. And I was like, who's this guy? Who's Mike? But I learned, I have to say that they did step up the comedy after Mikey came on. But I still like Joel better for a while, but I do like Mike. I did end up liking him just as much as Joel by the time the end came around. And I remember the reunion show where they did ref tracks. Yeah, that's a funny show too. Terrell, do you remember the PBS show Square One TV, which was kind of like the Electric Company, but with math? I do not remember that. I don't remember that. I remember that high school show that was on. I think it still might be on, like the longest running kind of high school show. And it was an under-budget show, and it was out of Canada. Degrassi. Now, I was watching Degrassi when it first came out. And I think, and why I'm mentioning that is I'm not sure if it was on PBS or not. But hey, it was great. I don't think I watched that Square One. I'll have to go back and look at that. I agree, they were both good. Yeah, they were both good. And did you like those off the wall Fox shows like Herman's Head and Parker Lewis Can't Lose? Yes, I did. Those are some shows that I thought didn't get, and I think that was late 80s and kind of verging into the 90s, and things were kind of up in the air, like what shows were going to take off. And there was a show there with Matthew Perry that I thought was great. I loved that show. And I thought it was taken off the air way too soon. I'm a huge Matthew Perry fan, by the way. He was my favorite character in Friends, although, it's hard to pick out a favorite character, but if there is. And everybody thinks that out of all the Friends people, I most emulate Matt. I almost emulate Chandler Bing. So we're kindred spirits, he and I. Let's see. Yeah, Parker Lewis Can't Lose was good. It was really good. And Herman's Head was interesting. Only saw a few episodes, but I did like Parker Lewis because I kind of identified with the young. Well, I didn't identify with him. I looked up to it. The guy who was the ruler of 10 planets and couldn't lose. Always got the girl and said the right thing, and things worked out for him. I was just like, man, I wish my life would work out for me like that. So I like that show quite a bit. And there's some other ones around that time too. Like I said, that Benjamin Bean one, I think that was called. I really enjoyed that show, and I really wish it was it was cheesy. I look back on it now; it was so cheesy, but at the time, I thought it was gold. All right, there was a show about five dudes that share an apartment. Pigsty or Pygmy, I think. I don't remember that one. Five dudes who share an apartment. I think you're thinking of Zoolander, where him and his five male model friends, they share an apartment. Yeah, yeah, and they go get orange mocha frappuccinos, and they all die in a horrible accident. So I think we know what happens when five people share an apartment. It ends in tragedy. All right. Synchronize swatches. One of the things on my to-do list is to talk about fashion. I would really like to get a professional, like somebody who's in the fashion world, and talk to them about the fashion that came out in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I mean, what were we thinking, right? I mean, parachute pants, bell bottoms, and I dressed like Don Johnson for a good 7 months in the 6th grade. I mean, I'm not kidding. They called me Whitey at school. That was my nickname, Whitey. I think 7th grade, maybe seventh grade. And then halfway through the year, I turned into a stoner. I started growing my hair out long, but the first half of the year, man, I was all about the t-shirt and the sport coat rolled up in the white pants. Yeah, I even might have some pictures around that I will embarrass myself with one of these days. What did I think about Max Headroom? From what I haven't watched it since it was on. But of course, it's part of nostalgia, and you run into it now and again. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was cool. I liked it. I was for it. I was really into TV at the time, and I just thought it got taken off the air a little too early. But I don't know what I would think about it now. There are lots of shows I go back and watch now, like 21 Jump Street. Like I was watching 20 because I was going to do a show on cop shows of the 80s. I haven't done that yet, but I'm going to. And I was watching 21 Jump Street. Man, what I thought when I was watching it then and what I think when I watch it now is just the difference is just night and day. It's incredible. So, I mean, at the time, Max Headroom was great. Awesome. All right. From what I understand, when In Living Color debuted on Fox in 1990, it was meant to replace the Tracey Ullman show, though both were completely different sketch shows. Yeah. Tracey Ullman was great. I actually saw Tracey Ullman in a bookstore in London. Yes, I was in London for 4 days, and I ended up running into Tracey Ullman. And I was starstruck. I was with a group of people, and my friends went up and talked to her, but I was so dumbfounded. I was just like, "That's Tracey Ullman." She was pushing a stroller too, and one of the ladies who was with our group, she was talking to her and talking about it, and I was just like, I was literally like not even across the room, like halfway across the room from Tracey Ullman, and that was in 1994 that I ran into her when I was over there. Let's see, Sonny Crockett, he was cool. I wanted to be like Tubbs, so yeah, we need Tubbs out there. We do, because Sonny Crockett, I mean, he's one of those people who kind of steal the show, and I thought Tubbs was great and underrated as well. Let's see, Terrell, are you excited to see Ghostbusters Afterlife and Halloween Kills when they both come out later this year? Ghostbusters, yes. Halloween, no. I do not watch horror movies. I just don't. It's more of it's not even so much of a religious thing for me. And I don't get, this show's not about what my faith is and stuff like that. But there are certain shows that I have a pretty broad palette when it comes to shows, but I just don't watch horror movies. I can't handle them. I've run into too many demons in my life, and I would not walk across the street to meet another one. Let me just say that. And you can call me crazy if you want. Go ahead. I don't care. But I don't like horror movies. Yeah, I'm scared. I am scared. Terrell, you say, how do you feel about the original The Flash TV show that aired on CBS for one season in the 1990s? I thought it was weird. I remember liking it, and what I remember about it is I remember thinking I didn't know what year it was, and I didn't watch every episode, but I did watch it fairly frequently. So I mean, I do remember catching a few episodes at least, but not enough to kind of keep with the story. And every time I watched it, I remember thinking, what what year is this? Is this like the 1950s? Is this the 80s? Is this the 90s? So that's the only thing distinctly I remember about it. But I do like superhero movies, and one of these days that is on my list is one of these days that what is on my list is to talk about the evolution of superhero movies. I do want to dedicate a podcast to that as well. So that'll definitely come up because, like the differences in superheroes and how they played out in the 80s and 90s and 70s and today totally changed. And I'd like to have somebody on the show and talk about that. All right. When do you consider to be the point where X-Files jumped the shark? I will definitely, by the time Mulder went off the air, and then they brought the other guy in. By then, for sure, and maybe even before then. I was a huge X-Files fan, but I'll be honest with you, I even stopped watching it before Mulder left. So I would definitely say then. But like I said, I think I've said this before on other programs, and that is when the 90s came around, I was kind of, I was a young adult. I was getting jobs and stuff, so I didn't have as much time for television. And of course, as a young adult, you have a big social life as well. But X-Files was one of those shows that I made time for like every week. But then by the time that season came along, just before Mulder left, I left. I stopped watching it. So I watched the probably season. So that probably is an indication as to, at least I have to say, it didn't interest me enough for me to make it a priority. So I would say maybe that season or the middle of that season prior to when Mulder left the show would be my guess. Did you like the Hogan family? Yeah, yes, I did like the Hogan family. It was eventually, I think it was called Valerie's Family first, or Valerie, then changed to Valerie's Family, then it changed to the Hogans or something like that. It was kind of a long story. I did enjoy that show quite a bit. I was a big fan of the Batemans. All righty, let's see, Terrell. Is My So-Called Life a great show canceled too soon? Considered to be the anti-90210, since you never really watched 90210. Yes, every episode of My So-Called Life was definitely better. Even though I was kind of a young adult and not in high school at the time, I certainly related with the characters more. And Claire Danes, whew, what a looker. I mean, quite honestly, back then, I mean, she was one of those 90s queens that we all really liked. And that is a good point. Yeah, it is an anti-90210. It's the 90210 where the rich kids and My So-Called Life were the struggling generation of that. All right. Well, hey, folks, I have been on here for nearly an hour. The comments are slowing down a bit. Let me just remind you of a couple things before I go. Please subscribe. Please pick one of those videos, share it on your favorite social media. And also, you can support us financially if you want to by going to both the Buy Me a Coffee page and the Patreon. The Patreon is Retro Serial. The Buy Me a Coffee page is Board Game Life. So if you're interested in that, please support us and share this on your favorite social media. Got a couple more things I want to read here, and then I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Just thank you so much, everybody, for making this great and being interactive with me on this channel. I thought the weak point of the X-Files was the fact that they never revealed the secret behind the conspiracy. Yeah, it is a little bit too much cat and mouse, where I don't know if you played with a cat for a long time and never let them get it, they get disinterested. Um, and yeah, it's true. I love the movies, though. The X-File movies I thought were really good. Oh, I got to make time for this. Do you think Nirvana helped set the standard for the early 90s grunge movement? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think Nirvana, there were a lot of alternative rock bands, and you're hitting on a soft spot in my heart, Terrell, because Nirvana is my all-time favorite band ever. My all-time favorite band. Now, I love a lot of bands, but my all-time favorite band is and has always been. There's been a couple of bands that have come close, but is Nirvana. And I did like the alternative rock movement, and I did like the grunge movement, which was part of that. And so, yeah, of course. I mean, Nirvana is a legend. I mean, 3 studio albums, and they changed the world. Huge Nirvana fan. You mentioned 21 Jump Street, and I liked it too. Do you like the spinoff, Booker? I never saw a single episode, but I do remember that. Where do you consider to be the point that grunge started to go downhill almost as soon as it got popular? I wasn't. So this is one of those things that I make a big deal about. I really wasn't a grunge fan. I was a Nirvana fan, and I was an Alice in Chains fan. I was more of an alternative rock fan. And I know grunge and alternative rock, like, they're almost synonymous, but they really aren't. Alternative rock was a movement of bands that couldn't be pigeonholed into one category. And grunge was one of those things. So if you look at a lot of underground grunge bands at the time, and I've listened to a lot of them, the ones that made it big were the ones that made it big because they were good, and the rest of them, honestly, they weren't that good. And I'm not trying to be mean. I gotta try to stay positive, but grunge really wasn't my thing. I was more into Nirvana. I did wear the flannel and all that stuff. I wore the flannel and things like that. I mean, I was into it. But if you ask me the bands I was listening to, it was not. They were not overwhelmingly grunge bands. They were like Jesus and the Mary Chain, Nirvana for sure, REM. I was a big fan of REM. I was a big fan of just different bands like that. Faith No More. I was a big fan of them. I was a big fan of the Cult. For me, grunge was only one part of this underground movement. The Violent Femmes. So I think grunge kind of started to go downhill as soon as it got discovered, because they started to manufacture it, and you can't manufacture it. You just like punk rock, you can't manufacture punk. It's the people who really are into punk, or who are really into grunge or alt rock. If you manufacture alt rock, it just can't be manufactured. It's not like heavy metal. Heavy metal can, to a degree, be manufactured. So I think it definitely died by '96, when it died when Soundgarden broke up. It died in '94, but it was dead by '96. And then all these copycat grunge bands that kind of came out after that, I didn't care for them one bit. Not one bit. All right. Watch any horror movies with Elvira? No, I haven't. When did Cobain die? He died in '94, April. I believe it was April 8th of '94. I get confused if it was April 8th or 10th, or maybe they found the body on April 10th. Yeah. And Thrash Pondo, what vintage show would you bring back if you could? Friends. I said this on I don't know if that's vintage enough. I mean, I think it is. It's '90s. It ended in 2000 something, but I loved Friends, and I definitely have written shows in my head about what happened to the characters. So, and I could definitely not just see a reunion show, but see more episodes if they did them properly. A lot of the other shows, I'm not sure. There are probably some more shows on that list that I would bring back. I was 11 when Tupac and Biggie were both murdered, and their deaths pretty much marked the beginning of the end in the East Coast West Coast gangster rap feud. I couldn't agree with you more. I yes it did. Yes it did. All right, correct. I was 10. Okay. All right, folks. I'll take a couple more questions if you want to go on. If not, then always remember subscribe, share, like, donate. Let's. I would love to. I mean, my big dream is to be able to just do this as much as possible. Thank you, everyone, for being with me. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to sign off. Take care, everyone. This has been a great show. I can't believe the interaction that I've had with you tonight. Thank you so much, and we will talk to you again. Thank you, too. All right, we will see you again real soon. Let's see. All right, night, man. Thank you. Take care, everyone.